We are going to talk about Netaji, and with me, Mr. Kingshuk Nag, one of the finest journalists of this country. And Mr. Nag had written on various subjects, actually, starting from business, economy, to biography, on cultural affairs, politics. And Mayadhar Babu, he is one of the leading trade union leaders of Odisha. So, and let me ask the first question to Mr. Nag. Sir, when you talk about Netaji, always there is a angularity. People from this side say that he is dead. People from that side say, no, he was alive, and Nehru was responsible to make him what he is today. His death is still mystery. And I remember in my childhood, I grew up listening one stories. How Netaji went to meet Hitler, and there were dozens of Hitler sitting in one room, and how he spotted very intelligently the right Hitler. So that was the story I heard in my childhood. And then I was reading so many books, and there are so many mythical stories. It becomes, as if Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was not a character of flesh and blood, rather he is a character of mystery and mythology. How do you see and how do you place Netaji in that context?
Yeah, it's a very interesting subject of Netaji, and I also got interested in the subject, but because it is a very interesting subject. About all other national leaders, you know what they did and what happened to them. You know what happened to Nehru, you know what happened to Gandhi, you know what happened to Sardar Patel, but you don't know what happened to Netaji. Why? Because Netaji was a man interested in mystery, because he was trying to hide himself, because he knew that he was working in an environment where he had a lot of enemies. So therefore, he was indulging in these mysterious things so that he would not be caught. Now what happened was that, as you know, Netaji had tied up with the Axis powers during World War II, and unfortunately they lost. Then at that point Netaji decided to escape to Russia. Why Russia? Because the Russians were the part of the Allied forces, but Russians, the philosophy of Russians, of the political philosophy of Russians were not equal to that of the Americans and English. So for him, it was a matter of chance. So he was taking a chance and going to USSR and trying to see if he could mobilize them in his battle against the British. So now a lot of new light has come on Netaji. Many of the things I'll say you'll find very interesting and funny also, because you have never heard that before. The stories that we have heard about Netaji is that he escaped to Russia en route bomber airplane which got crashed at Taipei in Taiwan, and he died. So a lot of people who are followers of Netaji say that the air crash was there, but he never died in that air crash. But the Indian government insists that he died. Why the Indian government insists is a different story. I'll tell you shortly. Now what happened to Netaji now, it seems was that it was a story that he fled by on an Air Force plane of Japan. He did not. Actually, on somewhere in August 20th, 1945, he boarded a submarine from Singapore, which is where he was operating from, and that submarine took him to Vladivostok in Soviet Union, and he got off from the submarine. He was carrying with him a lot of gold and all. Most of the gold was going to USSR, going to Japan.
But what are the sources that you are talking about actually?
There are a lot of sources. I'll tell you which source you are asking me for the Japan journey.
Because in this, there is two theory. One theory is that he was dead in that plane crash. And the other one is that he escaped to Russia, and we know that you have also written about the Russian I think, what 19K19
Yeah,
department
yeah.
they spoke about.
Yeah, correct.
That guy, he was a British agent and all kind of sources. So, but you are talking about he escaped to Russia. And what is the source actually? What is the historical source for that?
Let me tell you the story, then I'll tell you the source.
Yeah, please.
The story is that he escaped in a submarine which was there in Singapore. Now, you know, it's a very funny story that Germany used to run a lot of submarines in Southeast Asia before World War II finished. And the Germans had surrendered to the British and all on May 2, 1945. But Japan was still carrying on the fight, and Japan surrendered ultimately on August 15. So during the period, the Soviet Union, the Germans surrendered, and the Japanese surrendered. That is from May to August 15. There's few months. So in Asia there were a lot of submarines of Germany doing the rounds. So those submarines, they were given to Japan. So it is in one of the submarines that Mr. Bose escaped from Singapore and he went to Vladivostok. From Vladivostok, he took the land route and entered into Soviet Union. Now, in the wartime, you know, the capital of USSR had been shifted. The capital was not Moscow. It was some other place in Asia. So he wanted to go to that part of Asia. So when he went there, the Soviet Union has a very funny system. They, of course, don't trust everybody 100%. To start with, he was kept in a protective house, which is like a jail only, because they wanted to check his credentials. So he was kept in jail. And there are certain pictures available of them that he's in jail. The pictures were procured by a lady called Mrs. Puravi Roy. She stays in Calcutta. She's about 80 years old. And she had operated in Moscow around 1991. And in 1991, around that time when there was opening the liberalization in the USSR, and a lot of Soviet people had opened up their system, and also petty vices like corruption had entered the system. She was able to procure those pictures by paying it to some junior Soviet officials. And that picture shows that he's in a jail in Soviet Union. So from there we know he was there. Then this same Mrs. Puravira also realized that there are a lot of documents in a Russian archives. But that archive is close to Moscow. But again, that archive is not open to foreigners. Foreigners means to Indians and Americans and whoever. But she desperately wanted to go into the archives, but she could not. Therefore, she befriended a Soviet serving Major General Kalishnikov, I think, and she requested him, please go there. So he went there. Now from that archives, unfortunately, even Soviet Union, any Soviet who goes and finds some documents also can't bring out the document or take a photographic copy of that. He can just read the documents. So this man went, saw the documents, memorized its contents, and came out. That shows the minutes of a meeting in 1945 December, where Mr. Stalin is presiding over a meeting in which there are some other important Soviet Union leaders, like Molotov, who was his foreign minister, and another chap was the ambassador to Japan, and they are discussing what to do with Chandra Bose. They can't pronounce it as Subhash Chandra Bose, so they are wondering what to do with Chandra Bose. So that was the discussion. What they discussed, we don't know, but that date was somewhere in the previous year, and we know that he is supposed to have died in 1945, but here these fellows are discussing about Chandra Bose in 1946. So Chandra Bose was alive then. That much we know.
Okay. This is one side. Let me ask Dr. Nayak, Mayadhar Nayak, how do you see the whole things actually. The death controversy, whether he was alive or dead, or he was in Russia or he was dead in Taiwan, or the whole controversy. Even nowadays, everybody is interested to talk about Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, particularly after 2014. How do you see the whole thing?
Namaste. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose ये उच्चारण मात्रे प्रत्येक भारतीय भीतर गोटे शिहरण आसे आमे बापूजी चाचाजी नेताजी ये तीन जन स्वाधीनता आंदोलन पूर्वर स्वाधीनता पाई महान संग्राम भितर लिप्त थे गोटे कथा ओडिशा हो भारत वर्ष हो ए पर्यंत आसीनी गांधी के आमे फादर ऑफ द नेशन कहती फादर ऑफ द नेशन जातिर पिता किंतु नेताजी को फादर ऑफ द इंडियन रिवोल्यूशन भारत विप्लव स्वाधीनता संग्राम से फादर पिता से जो महासंग्राम आरंभ करथिले ब्रिटिश विरुद्ध रे साम्राज्यवादी शोषक शासक विरुद्ध रे से संग्राम जदिओ आमे ठीक भाव नहीं पारे नहीं कारण से महात्मा गांधी की समस्त मानुले से भी मानुले नेताजी भी मानुले किंतु महात्मा गांधी नरम पंथारे देश स्वाधीन करने को चाहूले नेताजी किंतु चरम पंथा न भी विप्लव बाटरे चाहूले मत रक्त दियो मु तुमको स्वाधीनता देवी से नेताजी युद्ध करी माने लड़ाई करी स्वाधीनता आम छिड़े आनिबा तांकर जे सब आरंभ थिला शेष पर्यंत से जीवन देले से समय रे नेताजी जेभली भाव सारा पृथ्वी आखिरे गोटे उज्ज्वल तारका थे आ ब्रिटिश आखिरे भयंकर एक दुसंपन्न थिला चारिआडू तांको अटका जाउथला किंतु से जो स्वप्न देखिथिले स्वाधीनता मोर जन्मगत अधिकार स्वाधीनता हाथ पाति की अणा जाई पारे ना स्वाधीनता छड़े आने को पड़ो यही चिंता भावना से आरंभ करथिले इतिहास तो बहुत अच्छी माने एभली नेतृत्व बोधे भारत वर्ष रे समसामयिक पृथ्वी विरल विशेषकर भारत वर्ष रे गांधी को शेष मुहूर्त से मानुले किंतु तांको नरम पंथा को समर्थन करुनथिले एपरिक कांग्रेस भितर जतबे सभापति पाई कंटेस्ट हुए गांधी को पार्टी पट्टाभिषिक्तारामा ए पाखरे नेताजी गांधी हारी जाइथिले से तो इतिहास अच्छी सब द्वितीय सभापति कौन है के जानी कहीं समर्थन कले नहीं से इस्तीफा देते फरवर्ड ब्लॉक गठन कले से तो आउरी गोटे इतिहास କିନ୍ତୁ ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ସେ ଦେଶକୁ ଯାଇକି ଯେଉଁଟା ଆଲୋଚନା ହେଉଥିଲା ସେ ହିଟଲର ପାଖକୁ ଯାଇଥିଲେ, ହିଟଲରରୁ ରୁଷିଆ ଯାଇଥିଲେ, ସେଇଠୁ ଫେରିଲେ। ଦେଶ ସ୍ୱାଧୀନ ହେବାର ପରେ ପରେ କଥା ଶୁଣାଯାଏ, ମୁଁ ହୁଏତ ଆମେ ସେତେବେଳେ ଜନ୍ମ, ନେହେରୁ କହିଥିଲେ ଯଦି ସୁଭାଷ ବୋଷ ଭାରତବର୍ଷ ଫେରିଆସେ ମୁଁ ତାକୁ ତରୱାରରେ ସ୍ୱାଗତ କରିବି। ଏ କଥାଟା ଛୋଟ କଥା ନୁହେଁ। ଆମେ ଜାଣୁ ଇତିହାସର ଅନ୍ଧାରୀ ମୁଲୁକରେ ବହୁ ଲୋକଙ୍କୁ, ସେ ଆମେରିକା ହଉ ଇଂଲଣ୍ଡ ହଉ, ସବୁ ଜାଗାରେ ଯେଉଁମାନେ ପ୍ରତିଭାଶାଳୀନତା ଆଗକୁ ଆଗକୁ ଯାଆନ୍ତି ସେଇ ଦଳରୁ ସେଇ ସମସାମୟିକ ନେତାକୁ ହତ୍ୟା କରନ୍ତି ଷଡ଼ଯନ୍ତ୍ର କରି, କୌଶଳ କରିକି। ନେତାଜୀ ଷଡ଼ଯନ୍ତ୍ର ଶିକାର ହେଇଛନ୍ତି। ନେତାଜୀଙ୍କୁ ହତ୍ୟା କରାଯାଇଛି କି ସେ ଆକ୍ସିଡେଣ୍ଟରେ ମରିଛନ୍ତି, ଇଏ ତ ବିଚାର ଚାଲିଛି, ଯୋଜନା ଇଏ କମିଶନ ଚାଲିଛି, ଇଏ ଚାଲିଛି ଯେ 75 ବର୍ଷ ହେଇଗଲାଣି, ଆଉ ଛିଡ଼ୁନାହିଁ। ତେଣୁ ନେତାଜୀକୁ ଯେଉଁ କଣ୍ଟ୍ରୋଭର୍ସିଆଲଟା ଅଛି ସେ କ୍ଲୋଜ୍ ହେଇଯିବା ଦରକାର। ଆଉ କ'ଣ ବଞ୍ଚିଥାନ୍ତି ନା ବଞ୍ଚିବେ? ନା ଗାନ୍ଧୀ ଅଛନ୍ତି, ନା ନେହେରୁ ଅଛନ୍ତି, ଆଜି ବି ଧରି ନିଅନ୍ତୁ ନେତାଜୀ ନାହାନ୍ତି, କିନ୍ତୁ ତାଙ୍କର ଆଦର୍ଶ ସବୁଦିନ ପାଇଁ ବଞ୍ଚି ରହିବ। ଧନ୍ୟବାଦ।
Mr. Now coming to Mr. Nag. Sir, there are 2-3 things I want to ask you. One is that when you wrote your book, at that time new documents were coming up. There were the process of declassification was started. And now we have seen that there are so many documents coming to the public domain. Even I think Russia has declassified few files. Japan has declassified 2 files. So looking at all these files and looking at this Nehru versus Netaji controversy, how do you see actually, how do you think that this controversy is going to end, or it is going to be a further for future controversy?
It's going to be a fodder for future controversies because the story has not ended. When I started writing my book on Netaji, the Indian archives had also not been declassified. So within 2 years I had to revise my book because a lot more new information came out. And unfortunately this information is come out and is put up in National Archives, but most of our countrymen don't even know of it. As an instance, I can tell you, there is a document which was being found in the National Archives. It is very much there. Anybody can access it. It shows that British intelligence, in those days, Intelligence Bureau used to have an office in Viceroy's office in Calcutta or Governor's office in Calcutta. And there, some information was received through Soviet SW, that is shortwave 31, which showed that Netaji was actually giving a broadcast to his own countrymen. Unfortunately, nobody heard it, but the intelligence heard it. There he said, this was much beyond the period when he's supposed to have died. He's saying, look, my friends, I am still alive. I am in a foreign country, which is a friend of India, and I want to come to India, and I shall shortly come to India at the head of our invading army. And he says, I know my men in INA are being tried in Red Fort. So it proves that. And he says, he'll come to India at the head of this. But this is not known. But actually I can take the story even forward.
Yeah, please.
The thing is that Mr. Bose had met Mr. Stalin, and though the men were very difficult, Stalin was also giving some leads to Mr. Bose because Stalin did not like Nehru and company. So he thought the Soviet intelligence had told their bosses that India is becoming a new country and we must have our intelligence presence in here also. So they had advised Stalin to take a soft view towards India. By the way, Stalin knew very little about India, and his intelligence documents show that he did not even know whether Sri Lanka, the Ceylon, was part of India or not. He also did not know whether the national language of India was Gujarati or not, or Hindi. So Stalin was convinced that Netaji would be a very important asset in their hand. So Netaji proposed actually, and then he set into motion a plan. A plan was that the detachment of forces of Russia assisted by Indians who would enter into India from which is now called Northwest Frontier Province. But Parantu, that did not happen for the simple reason that Stalin also had other plans, because this plan was about end of 1945, and at that time Soviet Union was very taken aback by the plans of the US, which had bursted an atom bomb over Japan. The Soviets were much concerned because they did not have the same technology. So they were making massive efforts to make research in on atom bombs in Soviet Union. Now they have chosen a plan to come to, not to plan to come to India, but they decided that their stations, the machine with the atom bombs will be manufactured at a place somewhere in Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan. They chose this place because it was not very populated, because they were for the first time trying to test their atom bomb, and they required a lot of space, and they required a lot of secrecy. Now this plan came in opposition to Netaji's plan, because Netaji thought he will bring an army into India from those northern countries like Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan. So I think there was some dispute between him and Stalin, and after that Stalin had to send him off to the Gulag archipelago. So the story था कि वो आने वाले थे Japan वहाँ से Soviet Northwest Frontier Province, which was still part of India. This is 1946, but he actually couldn't come. And before that, he had made the mistake of informing Nehru that I am going to come to India versus NWFP and help me. But he is not in a mood to help him.
Okay, but there are many stories, even the new documents that we find where it is said that, Nehru is very generous to his family members and other things. So, but now I want to ask you a very, very political question.
Please.
Why? You have studied the RSS, Vishwa Hindu Parishad and Rise of Narendra Modi. And whenever there is a right-wing government in center, why they are really very keen to dive into the controversy of Netaji. They started this Manoj Mukherjee commission during Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and then when Modi came, and then he talks about the declassification of old files. Though now in last 3-4 years they are not talking about that. It's completely forgotten after declassification and other. And I think in the last election in Bengal, that was a dominant issue. But during last election, everybody forgot about Netaji. Why this new interest of right-wingers? Ideologically, they are never together. Netaji was never accepted as an icon by Hindu Mahasabha or RSS. But all of a sudden, why Netaji become a central icon to their narrative?
Because I think the pivot is on Nehru. That fellow Nehru was a crook according to the RSS and according to me also, but I will not say so publicly. So the story is that there was a man called Mountbatten, all of us who know. When Southeast Asia the Indian army had lost and the British army was lost, Mountbatten befriended Nehru. And therefore Mountbatten then came to India also after his position there, and became the Governor General of India. And the man Nehru was totally acting as his man. So that Mountbatten is the man.
But that is an assumption, you know. I have seen many people who were against Indian freedom struggle. They spoke against Nehru even in British history. So,
but I'll give you some facts. India got independence when? 15th August 1947. Why? Why 15th August? Because the Japanese had defeated the British. British had defeated Japanese on 15th August 1945. So and that time the British admiral in those parts, war parts, was Mr. Mountbatten. So Mountbatten was given the option of choosing the date of freedom for India. The date of freedom for India was actually supposed to be India was supposed to get freedom around September 1948. But 47 में हो गया. वो डेट किसने चूज किया? Mr. Mountbatten. So ये बात है. And this man was totally under Mountbatten, Nehru.
but what's wrong in that? Suppose you got freedom before 1 year. What's wrong in that?
Partition is wrong.
No.
Partition was wrong.
The partition is a completely different subject. Okay.
But it's linked to the party freedom.
Yeah.
Na?
Okay. Let's come to the concluding part of this debate. I just want to know from you the new set of documents that is declassified by Government of India, and do you believe that there are still more files or still more documents to come up in Indian archives or in other parts of the world?
There must be hundreds of documents which I have no clue, but there will be. I don't have clue, but those documents are hidden here and there.
But looking at Netaji as a BJP, as a right-wing perspective and from a left-wing perspective, how do you, is it not very typical, is it not very awkward to know a man who was what Mr. Nayak was telling, the father of Indian Revolution? We are not evaluating his contribution as a man of struggle. Rather, we are trying to fit him into our own schemes, into our own agenda.
I agree with you that we are trying to fit him in our agenda. Because today Modi has put up a statue of Netaji at India Gate. Therefore, a lot of interest in Netaji. But I am saying that even then, there is not a lot of interest in Netaji. Even then, because the Indian people are not following everything that the Indian government does. And it's a matter of pity that Netaji is not. See, in this session, Mr. Manudas is sitting here, he's put the session on Netaji at the last.
He should have done, yeah, he should have put it in the first of Netaji cannot be the last part of the agenda.
अच्छा ठीक है आप वो बाद में बात कर लेंगे. So basically, and most other late sessions, late festive sessions won't have sessions on Netaji. And the moment today you argue about in favor of Netaji, immediately people will say that you have turned into a convert and become Modi's man. I say, why should you say so? But this is the fact.
That question is coming up because that I earlier said that because there was no ideological platform, there was no ideological common point where Netaji and RSS could have met. So all of a sudden, so no, I'm just going to conclude it. So I have only 4 minutes in my hand. So in this 4 minutes, I want to ask one question to Mr. Nayak and one question to Mr. Nag. One question to Mayadhar Babu. जे आपण माने सीधा सड़क जन ओडिया भाव में नेताजी को नहीं ये जो एत दिन धरिक जो कंट्रोवर्सी चली गत 70 वर्ष धरिक जो चली आप कहले ये सरी जावा दरकार किंतु ये सरब कि
ये नेताजी की नहीं कंट्रोवर्सी सरब नहीं कारण माने गांधी लोक मरीगला पर मार्केटिंग करती जो विराट विराट नेता साक्रिफाइस थाए विरोधी मतवाद लोक मार्केटिंग करती गांधी की मार्केटिंग है नेताजी की मार्केटिंग कर जयप्रकाश नारायण को मार्केटिंग कर विजय बाबू को मार्केटिंग कर केते नेता को मार्केटिंग कर माने व्यवसाय कौन कहले ମାନେ ନେତାଜୀଙ୍କ ମମତା ବାନାର୍ଜୀ ନେତାଜୀ ଖୋଲ 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 ମିଡ଼ିଆ ବାଲା ଛାଇଲେ ମୋଦି କହିଲେ ଖୋଲ 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 ଧର 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 ଇଏ ନେହୁରୁ ବି ସେ ଗଲା ପରେ ଖୋଲ ଖୋଲ ଧର 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 ଯିଏ ମାନେ ଏମିତି ଦେଖୁଛୁ ଯିଏ ଷଡ଼ଯନ୍ତ୍ରକାରୀ ସେ କି ଯିଏ ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ସେ କିନ୍ତୁ ଅନ୍ୟକୁ ଦୋଷ ଦେଇକି ଇଏ କରେ ଯେମିତି ସେ ନିଜେ ସାଧୁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଏଇଭଳି ଅବସ୍ଥା କାରଣ ନେତାଜୀ ତ ଚିରଦିନ ପାଇଁ ରହିବେ ନା ଭାରତ ବର୍ଷରେ ସୂର୍ଯ୍ୟ ଚନ୍ଦ୍ର ଥିବା ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଏ ମାଟି ଥିବା ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ନେତାଜୀ ଲିଭିବ ନାହିଁ ତେଣୁ ତାକୁ କେହି ନା କେହି କେତେବେଳେ ନା କେତେବେଳେ ମାର୍କେଟିଂ କରି ଚାଲିଥିବେ।
Thank you. It's a very, very, very pertinent. The marketability of a great political person, a great leader, will always be there. So, final question to you, Mr. Nag, that are you going to write a sequel of your book, Netaji, Living the Dangerous Life?
Yes, I will, because I think the entire truth is not yet public, and I am privately researching that. As I get more information, I'll bring out a third and final edition. I hope it will be a final edition at least. Because I have written 3-4 editions of the book, and every time I write, I find a lot much has happened in the past. Because we began by knowing nothing about him, and now we know so much that he was coming back to India. Achha, I can tell you something. Just you are saying, why are you blaming Nehru? There were documents found in the Indian archives which showed, there's a lady called Khurshid Nauroji. She was a Western lady. She's a Parsi actually. She was a well-known singer and dancer, and she was a private secretary to Mahatma Gandhi. And she is asking a question in writing to a man called, American journalist, his name I'm forgetting. He was the biographer to Mr. Nehru also. She is asking that man in writing that we are told that Mr. Bose might suddenly arrive, and she is writing in 1945-46. And if that happens, don't you think then Mahatma Gandhi and Nehru and all these people cannot come to power? The words may be wrong. I may have misquoted her in the sense that she may have said something else. It shows that in 1946 also, the Congress top bosses were aware that Mr. Netaji was still alive and he could any day turn into India. But this they are trying to hide, na? They are claiming that he died in that air crash. You know there was no air crash. Why are you telling cock and bull stories? And you want the country to believe? You can say that. So who's trying to say cock and bull stories? I'll just make a last point. I knew you are end of your patience. The intelligence bureau in India that you have today is a successor to the intelligence bureau of the British times. The same agency is ruling is the IB. So the first director, or second director, I think second director of IB after India became independent was a gentleman called Bholanath Malik, B.N. Malik. He was from Sham Bazar in Calcutta, and he knew Netaji because they were in college together or something, and they were sworn enemies. So this man, Bholanath Malik, had become director of IB, and he gave advice to Nehru on how to hide the facts. One of his suggestions was that let's have some false Netajis in the country. So if the actual Netaji were to arrive back in India, these false fellows will stand up, and then people will be confused. And one of the false fellows was a man called Gumnami Baba, जिसपे अभी movie भी बनता है. But this Gumnami Baba and Shalomari Baba before, they are all IB creations. So that is it. So this is what I wanted to tell you.
Thank you very much. But you know, this Gumnami Baba theory is another very. Anuj is very obsessed with the theory of Gumnami Baba. You don't believe in that. So.
I used to believe, because when I started researching, but later I realized it was wrong.
Yeah, I think you have also mentioned about Gumnami Baba in your book. Samba, thank you very much, Mr. Nag. I know it should have been a longer session.
Thank you very much. And with this, the session and the festival of 7th Odisha Art and Literature Festival has come to an end. but it is not the end. It is just the day of beginning of another festival. And we are grateful to our sponsors like Indian Oil Corporation, who has been our associated sponsor for all these 3 days for all sessions. And we are grateful to other supporters who has made this possible. We are grateful and thankful to all the media people, to the writers who came here all along and had a beautiful session all 3 days. And we are also grateful to our participants, those who came and listened, participated with the discussion to make it lively. Besides that, I have a team, very good team, team lead members like Dr. Jivitesh Roth, Mr. Paresh Patnaik, Mr. Prakash Das, Mr. Samarendra Das, and Mr. Bibhu Prasad Tripathi. They have given their most support, whatever possible, to make it a success. I owe them very much here, and I would like to express a deep gratitude to all of my team leaders, without whom it would have not been possible. Besides this, the education institutions like ASBM University and Srushti Academy of Management, IITTM and Bhubaneswar, and DAV Public School Pokariput have accommodated all our foreign writers, gave wonderful readings, and they are very much pleased, and they are carrying a good feeling to their respective countries. And I am so grateful to all of you who have I have not able to pay my gratitude. Now my friend will tell all these things. Thank you very much.
धन्यवाद समस्त को अशेष धन्यवाद जो 3 दिनिया ओडिशा आर्ट एंड लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल ये समाप्त घोषणा करा जाउची जो माने एथरे सहयोग करछंती जो माने आम सहित अछंती समस्त को आमर अशेष कृतज्ञता धन्यवाद।